what is it actually like shooting not only a feature film, but a feature low-budget independent horror movie? Today, we're gonna talk about it, and I do mean we because I have some interviews from our crew from Bright Afternoon Productions' upcoming movie, The Complex, where they are gonna be telling us, without mincing words, in no uncertain terms, their perspective, what it's like on set, what they were most excited about going in, how that changed, and what their daily routine was actually like. Hey you. If you're not already aware, back in October of 2025, myself and a crew of 4 other magnificent filmmakers went up to a remote place in Manistee, Michigan to film a low-budget horror feature. My name is Merrick, and I wrote, directed, and acted in The Complex. For those of you who have already been following us on this journey, first of all, thank you so much. We're in the heat of editing, working every day towards something really, really cool, but maybe that's a subject for another video. For now, let's talk about what our crew was most excited about going into production and how that played out differently compared to what they actually expected.
Hi everyone, Emma, the producer of The Complex, and I'm here to answer some post-filming questions. So before filming, I was most excited for Goo and to see Merrick monologuing, and we delivered on those promises. There was plenty of Goo, and Merrick really delivered on his monologues. It was so electric to watch, and I have to say, I wish we had some smell-o-vision, because the Goo was a very specific smell, kind of a mix of plastic and a mix of cocoa powder, and I think we were all smelling that for many days, and we could smell it in our dreams. It was quite disgusting, but it looked great.
So before we made The Complex, I had said that I was the most excited to be returning back to my home state of Michigan and reuniting with some of my friends from college. And that whole thing kind of exceeded my expectations because it was just crazy how fast we were able to find a rhythm and sort of get back into the swing of things. Because I know, at least in my case, it had been a few years since I've worked on anything like this. So just the fact that we were able to all jump back into those roles so seamlessly was incredible.
So if I remember correctly, the thing that I was most excited for was kind of seeing the end result, right? And going into it, I was a little skeptical about what the actual scope of what we're creating would end up looking like. And by the end of it, I was very, very thoroughly impressed. And I think we pulled off some very cool effects, some very cool shots, and performances from Merrick himself. Overall, I think we pulled it off, and I'm really excited to see it actually on the screen in front of me.
I was excited to have a laid back role on set, being an extra hand when needed, and as it turned out, I was needed a lot, and it was not laid back, and I worked very hard all the time.
Now that we've heard perspectives from props, audio, producing, and cinematography on how they felt going into production, how they evolved from when they actually got there, I'll go ahead and share my own 2 cents. First of all, I think it's worth noting that while I was in fact pulling triple duty as director, writer, and actor on set, that essentially everyone on our crew was wearing multiple hats, and people consistently stepped up to fill in gaps that on larger, more expensive productions might have had folks dedicated to them. I mean, we all took turns deep cleaning rooms, moving gear, hauling sand, doing set decorating, and a whole lot of very good improvisational problem solving as well. And as you've now seen, confirmed from everybody's perspective, it was really unique in that way. My specific combination, primarily operating as director and actor, but also in a lot of ways script supervisor, was very interesting. As director, the thing I was most excited about getting to set was just being around these incredibly talented people who I knew from all these different previous projects that we had worked on in the past, and just knowing that they're gonna be firing on all cylinders to translate the vision for the script into reality. And as a writer, it was incredibly surreal being able to watch that unfold in real time. It was also, I was very amped to, and okay, this might sort of make me sound insane, but I really wanted to see how people would solve the problems we hadn't managed to account for in pre-production on set. There's so much preparation, there's so much pre-visualization, spreadsheets, and planning. And as wild as it sounds to say it, I love when those unexpected things pop up on set that allow people to really think in these super unorthodox, kind of improvisational problem-solving ways. Also say, from an acting perspective, I wrote some really wild lines for myself, some intense moments, without spoiling anything. I don't want to spoil anything, but it gets pretty unhinged at points in the script. So I was deeply excited to get the opportunity to do that because, I was like, this is gonna be really fun. Now, how did that actually play out in the real world, kid? You gotta go out in the real world and get some life experience, all that good stuff. Well, there was in fact a lot of creative problem solving. I was honestly blown away by how well people were able to adapt super hard. I know that's kind of echoing a lot of the things that other people have said as well, but those issues that would pop up, even at its most stressful, most high intensity, for instance, like if we only had one shot to get something right, it was like, oh, if we screw this up, it's gonna take us hours to reset, and those hours are hours we kind of don't have. Even at those moments, people were pretty level-headed, which is not the case on every set I've ever been on. That's something I was really, really happy to see. Obviously, as a director, that's what you want, and as an actor, it makes it a lot easier to do a good job and have a good performance. I'll also say that at the start, I do think it took us about a day of shooting to really find our groove in that way. So as we kept shooting, the way people kind of gelled, not only creatively, but in terms of shorthand, understanding kind of more completely what we could do autonomously, what we could do really collaboratively, how to solve problems, and kind of when it made sense to go off and do something to fix it, or come back and as a group try and brainstorm and problem solve on something. That was really unique as well. But it did take us about a day to really settle into that, and by the end we had this very incredible kind of shorthand, which was really nice. All right, now let's throw it back to the crew to talk about how their general on-set experience was within the scope of their role, and how that kind of factored into their perspective as well.
So my daily schedule as the producer began the night before, when everyone in the crew, we would gather together and go over the shot list and decide what scenes we were going to film the next day, what things maybe had to be pushed further along the week because we didn't have the correct props or equipment, and we had to wait for those to come in before we shot those scenes. And then the next morning, we would wake up before the sun even rose, we would drive to location, and because the night before we had gone over what we were going to do, everyone was already prepared and knew what to expect this day.
Initially joined the project as a sound engineer, but over time through pre-production, I gradually transitioned into prop master and special effects. And that kind of led to an interesting experience where I was constantly switching hats on set. Like 1 minute I would be painting or making a prop look aged, and then the next minute I would be pumping fake blood through a rubber hose, and then the next I'd be rapidly trying to clean my hands and get all that fake blood and slime off of myself so I could hold a boom mic or operate sound equipment.
My experience on set as DP went pretty well. There was a couple hiccups here and there that we went through, but they all kind of smoothed out over the course of the week of shooting. And overall, I had a really good time. It was my first time actually doing a larger project of this kind of nature. And overall, I just think that it actually turned out to be something that I am very proud of, and I'm really, really looking forward to see it coming together.
My set experience as, Foley, recording sound, and helping out on set was extremely rewarding. It was difficult. It was very hard. It was very hard. We worked very hard all day, but it was so rewarding. At the end of it, you just felt euphoric with how fun it was, really, to work that hard for something that you are so passionate about.
And we're back. For me, as I mentioned before, my baseline was kind of operating on 2 or 3 parallel tracks at any given time. So one thing that I think I underestimated was how much I would need to kind of gear shift between those different, very opposing roles that I had on set. Like they weren't oppositional, but they are sort of like these literal dimensional differences to how you approach directing when you are also almost always on camera. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good problem to have. I'm not complaining about the size of the role that I had in the movie, but in some ways I felt bad for the crew because much of the time I was physically constrained when we were actively shooting to being in front of the camera, if that makes sense. If you're off in Video Village, for instance, someone could come up, ask you a question, show you something for approval, etc., etc. But when you're actively performing, you have to rethink how you approach that relationship a little bit. That being said, with any film set, there's still going to be, plenty of moments where you're waiting for something to happen, like you're setting up the light, doing a little mini company move from one area to the other, where you can kind of slip away and try and coordinate with that stuff. Or just honestly take a moment of downtime and be like, all right, hold on, we gotta figure this out. Let's just nail this down and then we'll keep shooting. As an actor, it was also very odd. Not only because I was directing my own performance, which to be completely honest, I would probably approach a bit differently in the future, but for all sorts of other reasons as well. So going into production on The Complex, I was so concerned about kind of, not being like a diva, so to speak, and doing excessive takes of my own performance. So I really didn't want to hold up production by being like, I don't know, that wasn't good enough. Let's run it back, let's do it again, and just doing these kind of takes for things that maybe we didn't actually need to do. Because there's a lot of dialogue in the script, and I really didn't want to hold us up by being like, I don't know, I'm being overly critical. And I think, honestly, I was so concerned about that there were maybe a few times where it would have been helpful to have that extra take in the edit. So right now I'm doing a lot of this post-production, and being able to kind of go between different takes or just have a little bit more coverage of some of those moments, I think it would have given me a few more options in post. And if there was something that we didn't maybe catch on the day, like, oh, we didn't anticipate this thing, oh no, we kind of need to go back and fix this thing. So I have to be a little bit more creative of how I approach the edit, and it makes my job a little bit harder now that I was overly concerned about holding up production on set by being a diva. Because there was a handful of moments where, we literally got something in one take, and because I didn't want to hold up production for my ego as an actor, as a director, I would more often than not keep the production moving, but that's not always the best strategy. So my takeaway there is that if I act in a movie I'm directing in the future, should I be so lucky, should I do a bunch of extra takes just to make sure I'm getting full coverage to hedge against my own impulse of not holding production for myself? I mean, yeah, pretty much. No, but in all seriousness, I think it did give me a bit more insight into that element that, maybe sometimes it's better to be a little self-indulgent, even when, the prospect of the production itself could already feel that way. Do I think my performance was bad? No, not at all. But I do think that it would have made my job a little bit easier in post-production just to have a few variations on something that could fit within the edit. I was imagining the edit. This is kind of a topic for a different video, but I had very specific vision for the edit in mind, but sometimes that is shaped by the footage that you actually are able to capture on set. Things that you change a little bit from the script and kind of adopt for the sake of time. You go, oh, well, let's just do it this way because, we're running out of daylight or this or that and the other thing. And you have to make those kind of decisions of kind of triaging what's most important in the moment. But then when you get into the edit, that kind of shapes your thinking of it, and you have to kind of go, okay, well, what did we lose when we did that, and how can I reconstruct that? So having those extra takes, I think, would have been a little bit helpful. So as far as thoughts on kind of how I approach being a writer on set, I'll also save that for a different video, maybe one where I talk a little bit more about the editing process and how that's kind of something that a lot of filmmakers refer to as your third opportunity to write the script, because the first one is when you actually write it, the second one is on set, and the third one is when you're editing. So maybe we'll roll that into one video and talk about it a little bit then. But for now, let's throw it back to our crew one last time to see what their daily routine was actually like on set. What are the kind of nitty gritty in and outs, the logistical and informational things we can learn from them about what their daily process actually was.
From there, during the day, it was mostly keeping track of what scenes we were filming, how much time it was taking, how much time the next scene would be taking, and also thinking about what props we needed to be preparing and what equipment we needed to move or start setting up in another location for the next scene we were shooting. So it was a lot of planning ahead and just being ahead of everything else so we weren't waiting too much on everything to be set up and to be ready to shoot. Also, throughout the day, I would do a lot of check-ins with everyone to see if they needed anything, if they were feeling good, if they were feeling like they were on track, if they needed help with anything, just to make sure that everyone's needs were being met and no one was being left behind in all the hustle and bustle. Also, a part of my daily routine would be to look ahead in the script or the shot list, sometimes both, most likely both, so that whenever someone had a question about what was coming up, what we needed, I would already have an answer for them.
Typical day on set started pretty early because we wanted to take full advantage of natural light. So the first thing I would do on set would be to check the props I'd made the day before to make sure that those had finished drying, if they were painted, or see if they needed any touch-ups. Then from there, I would organize the props we needed for that day as per the shot list and make sure those were ready and set aside for ease of access. And then whenever we were actually filming, if they didn't need me for sound work or if Kane could fill in for me, I would spend that time whipping up fake blood or slime or making new props. But a lot of that was kind of anticipating drying times and kind of, I had a lot of things cooking on the back burner the whole time.
So my daily routine on set kind of consisted of making sure that the camera equipment was ready to go every single day, making sure that all of our batteries were charged because we needed to be mobile the entire time, and framing shots, making sure that the lighting was good enough, and making sure that the lighting actually had the look that we were going for, right? A lot of it was natural lighting, and that worked really well for kind of the tone and the mood that we were going for, but there were some scenes where we had to bring in some artificial lights and kind of, make it look a little bit more of how we were envisioning it in our heads. So the daily routine was kind of a handful of things, but repeated 20, 30 times a day, so.
My daily routine on set was to find the boom mic, the lav mic, make sure everything has a fresh battery in it, make sure all the SD cards are in there, set up, ready to go at a moment's notice, carry it on me. I would have the lav clipped into my sleeve. I would have the boom mic Zoom recorder in my pocket, my hoodie. Carried around, headphones on, ready to go at a moment's notice.
All right, now that we've talked to the rest of the crew about their daily moves, kind of the ins and outs, all that good stuff, I'll tell you about what it was like from my perspective as well. And then we'll wrap up with a little bit more information on where we are in editing before we finish this video. So as a director, my daily routine was, of course, pretty intense, as it should be. I once heard this phrase, someone say, as a director, you should be the most passionate person on set at any given time. Not to say that other people shouldn't be passionate, but you should be the one who is really guiding that force, and people will look to you as that kind of most passionate person. So, it should be intense as a director, right? And it would evolve a little bit depending on our needs for that day. But that being said, there were a few things that were consistent throughout the entire shoot. One of the main things that was incredibly helpful, incredibly important, was prepping for the following day the night before with Cody and Emma in particular, sometimes with Kane and Isaac as well, but for the most part with my cinematographer, my producer, trying to figure out what we're actually going to be doing the next day. So not only was this essential for obviously keeping us on track so the production didn't just go off the rails completely. But also, it has a really important side effect. When everyone in production is kind of aligned coherently, and sort of on the same page about what you're actually trying to achieve, both on a macro level, like the vision for the project, which hopefully you should be doing mostly, I would say, earlier, kind of the pre-production stuff with mood boards, playlists, the script itself, all those kind of tonal things that you want to know sort of going into production, just talking to people about. But you do still, gel that on set a little bit once you're actually in the physical location and everyone has the props and costumes and stuff like that. So not only on that macro level, but also on the literal level, like the scope and scale for the following day. When you're able to do that, it really eases the tension, anxiety, gives you a high degree of confidence in your ability to get done what you need to get done, while also giving people kind of this higher sense of ownership and accountability with their role on set for the following day. And that sounds kind of like a weird thing to say, but when people know the sort of scope of what they're supposed to do, they also know the scope of what maybe they shouldn't be doing, and also they can really be like, okay, well, this is what I need to get done. I'm gonna knock that out. But if you kind of don't have a sense of that, or you're sort of just going based off of vibes, there can be a sense of like, oh, well, why didn't this thing get done? And it's like, well, no one knew that they were supposed to be held accountable for that. So when people have that, it's very, very helpful. So next up on set, when I was actually there and not doing the kind of pre-production for the next day, I would arrive with part of our crew, the people who really needed to be there super early, about an hour early to get us ready for our first shot of the day as the sun kind of rose in the background. So we would get there about 6:30. The first shot would be about 7:30. This would give us time to set up cameras, lights, make sure all that equipment is there, pile it all together where we need to be. And from an acting perspective, it gave me a little bit of time to get into costume, look over my lines for the day, and do some light warm-ups sometimes. Sometimes my warm-ups as an actor were a bit, shall we say, compressed, because I had plenty of things I needed to weigh in on, adjust, or go ahead and kind of set up while coordinating with folks, which is, that's just part of it when, if you're doing both of those roles. Sometimes you have to choose what thing is more important in that moment. One of the coolest things, though, about that was there was pretty much never a moment where I wasn't doing something really actively on set, aside from taking a break, like a lunch break or something like that, or running, grab water or whatever. Speaking of which, a little bit more in terms of kind of an overview as far as like what was our actual shooting schedule like. Typically arrive around that 6:30 a.m. with Cody and Emma. First shot would be about 7:30. We'd break for lunch around 1. Depending on, if we were in the middle of a take or something, sometimes we would hold off and really try and finish the thing we were doing. And on the days that we didn't democratically elect to extend our day in order to kind of shorten our last shooting day by a few hours, because sometimes we would. Sometimes we would get towards the end of the day and be like, you know what, let's keep rolling. This will give us more latitude later on. And this was something that, as a director, I was very mindful to leave up to pretty much everyone else. I was sort of the last one to want to weigh in on that, because I think that that's important. I mean, if it was really coming down to it, and I was like, look, guys, this is really, we really need to extend the day. I could make that determination, but I really wanted to leave that up to everyone else before kind of weighing in on it, and that was sort of how it worked on a couple of days of the shoot. So on days we didn't end up kind of extending the shoot by an hour or so, we would wrap each day at about 6:30 before doing dinner together while I ingested footage from the day. Sometimes I would also ingest footage from right as we were heading into lunch, because by the time we got back, we grab those drives, SD cards again, use them for shooting. For context, if you're not familiar with some of these terms, ingesting footage does not mean I was eating the SD cards. You probably gathered it means plugging that stuff in, dumping the footage from those SD cards, from the camera, from audio, onto the computer so that they can back up and we have those extra copies of them. Because one of the worst things you do not want while you're filming is for an SD card to fail and you have lost 2 days of footage or 12 hours of footage if you're doing it at the end of the day. So hedging your bets, doing it at that lunch period If something goes wrong in the back half of the day, you've only lost 6 hours of footage, which is not great, but, and thankfully we did not have that happen when we were doing the movie, but by golly, that is not something you want to have happen. And you don't want to just kind of put your faith that it won't happen. You got to do those kind of hedging your bets type of things. So now, as we wrap up this video, I'll turn it over to you. Did these insights from our crew kind of differ from what you thought a production on an indie horror set would look like? Are there any things that you wish that we had talked about that we didn't? Should I interrogate my crew a little bit more and glean some additional insights? Do you have insights of your own from your own on-set experience as a filmmaker or an actor? I guess I would also kind of consider that a filmmaker as someone who does both. If you do, I would genuinely love to hear about that in the comments. It's one of my favorite things. We're a small channel. I don't get a ton of comments. I read every single one of them and often reply to them. And I'm always extremely interested to hear what people's perspectives are, because I feel like as a smaller channel, we get a much more interesting group of people who comment on our videos. And before I let you go, if you've made it this far and are interested in more news about our horror movie, The Complex, about a man named Kark who moves into a new apartment trying to escape his past before being confronted by his sticking door handle, a spiraling maze, then you may be interested in our newsletter, which you can sign up for in the description below for exclusive updates and sneak peeks as we head closer to release. And also, of course, currently, still, for a limited time, if you donate more than $50 to The Complex, $50 or more to our production costs for The Complex, you can get your name in the credits. It's not gonna last forever, so make sure to do it now if you wanna make sure that you can get your name in the credits. And other ways to support us, of course, are buying merch from a Redbubble store, but we're just happy that you're here. And thank you so much for watching. Speaking of which, and supporting the project in general, we are hard at work in the editing mines as a quick update. And as always, we are starting to do additional work. So we are starting to get into the point where we're doing things like music demos, assembly edits, much more. I won't spoil too much more, but we're kind of heading into a new phase for development, which is pretty rapscallion exciting. I don't know what that means, but until next time, I will see you when I see you, and thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye. Ooh, it's scary.